My name is Hiro Murai. I'm one of the directors of Atlanta, and this is Notes on the Scene.
Posture. Posture. Keep your pull. Don't you cry. Again.
I love this song.
Shit.
So we are watching a scene from the episode Teddy Perkins. That's episode 6 of season 2. This is a weird one. You know, it's a bottle episode. We're kind of stepping out of our usual Atlanta world. We follow Darius' misadventures of trying to get a piano from an old man, Teddy Perkins, that he found online. It exists entirely in the house. It becomes sort of a horror episode. It's very different from the language of our usual show, but it's one of my favorites of the season.
Hey, Teddy? Your car's blocking mine.
This is towards the end, so spoiler alert. This entire episode, you're kind of seeing Darius trying to figure out Teddy's MO. Teddy is just a weird, eccentric, recluse old man, but you get the sense that he has some malicious intent or some ulterior motives.
Teddy?
Darius is usually dressed pretty wild. The thing about Keith is that he can really wear anything and make it look cool. So we constantly try to kind of push that and see what he can pull off. In this episode, we went a little more conservative. I like his look because it reminds me of James Caan and Misery. You know, he's got the little 70s jacket on and then the flannel. This episode is mostly covered either with Darius or kind of shot from a voyeuristic angle. You know, a lot of times you're either completely with him, but then that gets cut directly to a shot from a different room or from a TV screen, giving you the sense that somebody's watching at all times. So in this case, you're finding him in a location that we were in before. We've seen this part of the room before, but we've never seen this part of the room before. So we're revisiting an old room, but giving it kind of new context and revealing that there's actually another passageway that leads to a separate room. I think the space was really important to us. So the house is definitely a big character in this episode. Most of it is sort of untouched. Obviously, all the merch stuff is new, but you know, this house had this terrifying wallpaper, and a lot of the old sort of like colonial designs in the house is just exactly the way it came. It was really important to us to kind of let him wander through the large frame and then see how kind of small and insignificant he is in the context of the house. So you can see in this sequence that we're with Darius the whole time, and we're kind of in his subjective view of the projector and, you know, him taking in the information about who Teddy is. The film that you're watching on screen, that's actually shot on an 8mm Super 8 camera. We shot it in the basement of this church that we were kind of basing our production out of. In this shot, it's a real working projector, but it made so much noise that we just couldn't use any of the sound. So for these close-ups, we just had to figure something out on the day, and that just happened to be someone on a crash pad on her back, kind of spooling the wheels by hand. And then we cut to behind Darius. All of a sudden,
I love this song.
we're looking at him from Teddy's perspective. We do this a lot on the show, but especially in this episode, we like to frame things. Usually you would kind of frame it this way, leaving negative space in the direction of where the other character is speaking. But we short the frame and kind of cutting him off here and then leaving a lot of negative space on this side because it kind of creates this tension. It makes it feel like they're kind of holding something back or they're not connecting with the other character in a way. As the scene goes along, you'll notice that the negative space is on the opposite side.
Something wrong.
When we're designing Teddy's look, we always knew that we wanted to put him in dark spaces and kind of frame him with a dark hair and a dark clothes. So even from a far shot, you're always kind of seeing a floating face anytime you're looking at him. And his face is just so impactful and just it's very off-putting to look at. So we really try to conserve on close-ups. A lot of times he'll just sit in the wide frame and then you'll just see his pale face kind of floating in the dark.
Yeah, you parked your car right in front of mine.
Oh. I'll move it.
Our editor, Kyle, that's his favorite line. And he just constantly constantly goes, "Oh, I'll move it." That's his favorite fucking thing.
Anything else?
Where's your bathroom?
It's up the stairs.
So you can see this is the first time we cut to a close-up of Teddy. Again, we're kind of framing him short and leaving a lot of negative space on this side. And even on the close-up, I think performance-wise, we really wanted to keep his emotions sort of ambiguous. So we're constantly having to kind of lean in and read what Teddy's trying to do.
Right next to the attic. I was just up there myself. Do you know what I found?
Whoa.
In this scene, we were always conservative with close-ups, but also the way Teddy makes eye contact with Darius. He's always kind of looking off screen, and we don't really know where his attention is until he turns to Darius. And in this scene, obviously, we don't know what his intentions are until he pulls out the gun at the end. The edit in general was very unusual for us too, because we realized that the best parts of Teddy's performance is the moments before and after his lines, just because there was just so much ambiguity in what he's saying. So Kyle and I just often just dragged the clip out, and then we always liked the moments after more than the actual line.
Do you know what I found?
Like that.
Congratulations.
For what?
I choose you.
Again, shorted here. And for first time, we're kind of his eye line's getting closer and closer to the lens because the moment is getting more intimate between Teddy and Darius. And also, you'll notice in this episode in particular, our show in general is lit pretty, the lighting is pretty stylized usually. But on this episode, we opted for a more naturalistic look because, we're referencing a lot of, 70s psych horror stuff, but also we realized that his face is so much more effective when everything else looks very normal. We kind of pulled back on our usual bag of tricks and just let his face do a lot of the talking. Teddy's face is completely prosthetic. We went back and forth on the design quite a bit, but obviously the core inspiration is Michael Jackson, and there's a little bit of, I don't know why, but he has a little bit of James Brown in him too. I think the way the hair kind of falls around his face. We know that Teddy's face is kind of the centerpiece of the whole episode, so we use his position in the frame really deliberately. So in the course of the episode, you'll see a lot of moments where he's kind of blocked very small in the frame at first, and at a key moment to accentuate a certain line or moment, he kind of grows in the frame. When his face gets bigger in the frame, you can kind of viscerally feel it. It's a very upsetting face to have grow in the frame. He's supposed to be an older character, so at first I think there was a lot more kind of wrinkles and sort of sagging of the skin. But we realized what made him sort of terrifying is that he sort of looked sort of eternal, and he's done everything he can to kind of fight age. So we ended up with going with a more sort of taut texture on his skin, which, if you're a prosthetics person and you're trying to make a naturalistic face, you would never do that because no face looks like that. But that was kind of our goal. I can't help but just draw on his butt chin. Nobody knew that, that Donald was underneath the prosthetic. We just told people that we got the real Teddy Perkins.
I choose you. You're my sacrifice.
This shot was one of the last shots we got in the day. This is something that I just really wanted to get just because he sort of told his entire story in one frame. We get to see kind of his tragic background lit up in the background, and then we see his present self silhouetted against it. It's complicated because at this point you're supposed to believe that there's no Benny Perkins and that Teddy is pretending to be his own brother. We kind of subliminally plant the idea that this guy is this guy, even though one scene later, this is actually Benny, his brother, and this is Teddy. But this is something that, we're very conscious of in terms of what the audience knew at what point in the episode, and, what Darius knew at this point in the episode.
Put your phone on the ground. No. Keep that. I want it to look real.
The real projector is actually hidden behind this stack of books over here, and we had to digitally erase the light rays that came out of it. It was a very small room, so we had to kind of squeeze everything in. The editor was telling me that when we were cutting this, he just kept having Teddy Perkins nightmares. And he was really living in it.
We want what to look real.
The home invasion.
Because we were allowed to air with no commercials, we really got to kind of take control of how we wanted, this story to kind of evolve and kind of unfold. It's a lot slackier than most of our episodes. I think in general we like to take our time and we like kind of dead air and moments between lines on the show, but this in particular is literally him just staring at Teddy, trying to figure him out for most of the episode. So pacing wise, it's very deliberate and very slow. And we're kind of playing with the idea of building tension, whether that's for comedy or for horror. I've heard Jordan Peele kind of talk about this too, but I kind of viscerally felt that to be true this time. So it can either fall into some horrifying murder-suicide, which happens at the end of the episode, or a quirky, eccentric moment for Teddy. The ambiguity and the feeling of not knowing what's going to happen next is sort of what's driving this entire episode.
You killed Benny because you were obsessed.
No, man, look, there is no fucking Benny, all right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Important thing for me was that you feel some sort of empathy for Teddy. So even though he's sort of a crazy character and sort of a ridiculous character, there's a real sense of tragedy, and even though he does end up being sort of a psychopath at the end, you understand how he got there. I think empathy is kind of the key to all storytelling, and in this case, it's all about Teddy.